Okay, so just for those attending online, our feed from Chambers is not functioning for the camera, so you'll be able to hear us, but you won't be able to see us. That said, if you turn on your camera, we will be able to see you. Not confusing at all. So for our delegations, if you'd like to turn your camera on, that'd be lovely. We'll still be able to see you. So.
Oh, there it is. It's back. That maybe we should.
That would.
Oh, yours does. Okay.
Allison, just testing the audio to make sure that you can hear. Okay.
Oh, mine does.
Mine. Oh, 3 hits.
Mine won't go off now.
Okay, it's on. It's on now.
Thank you.
Mine's on.
Yeah.
Okay. And tell her a happy birthday. We don't. We'll now sing our national anthem, please.
Oh, our home native land, true faith to love, in all sky, when glowing hearts we sing in Christ, the true North, strong and free. From far and wide, O God, we stand on guard for thee. Thy kingdom come, glory of set free. O God, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, God, we stand on guard for thee.
There. There it is. It came back on.
Thank you. I think we need to approve the general agenda.
Ryan, go ahead.
I believe.
Alex, Bratseiko, hopefully I spelled your.
So far.
Oh, there it is. Came on now, David. Now, David, it's working now. Hello, it's working now. Alex, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you now. I couldn't hear you until now. Can you
Okay,
hear
go
me?
ahead. Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear what the conversation was prior. I, I'm, I hope that this is the right council meeting that I'm attending to speak about this. So I recently purchased a cottage at Port Severn. I full-time residing in Aurora, and I use that as my secondary property. The reason that I'm here to speak with you guys today is because of an incident that happened back in August 18, 2025. On occasion, I do let other people stay in my cottage. So it's a family and friends. I did have family friends staying there, which is their fifth time staying at the cottage. So they're familiar with the property. Now, during that time, there was a fire ban, which we have told them about. They didn't quite understand or did not read, I guess, the information that I provided them with respect to the fire ban, indicating that they're not allowed to have any open fire, including anything outside in the fire pit and things like that. On that day, as soon as they arrived, they lit a fire. My neighbor immediately, within the first 10 minutes, let them know that there's a fire ban. They're not allowed to, so they put it out. I have a water hose just beside the fire pit, so they put it out. 15 minutes later, the fire department has arrived because I'm assuming either the same neighbor or somebody else has mentioned that they had an open fire during the fire ban. The fire was already out. They were there for a couple of minutes and then ended up leaving. Now, my question is, I understand the circumstances, I understand the bylaws. I did receive a bill a month later for $570.50 for the 1 hour, which is the minimum charge for the fire department arriving, which is the MPO rate. I was not, I guess, it's not even that I wasn't aware. I am surprised that there is no leniency of any kind when it comes to these kind of situations of a one-time waiver or any type of forgiveness or any reduction in the fine of, because $570 is such an astronomical amount, which is the same as, for example, in Newmarket, Aurora, Toronto, Barrie. Those municipalities do have some sort of waiver when it's the first time that something like that happened. So my question to you is this something that is open for discussion? Is something that we can do about it? Because I just thought that a $500.70, it's not a fine, I wouldn't call it a fine, but a charge is just an enormous amount of money to pay for a mistake that was an inadvertence and wasn't something that was done on purpose. And just for the record, the fire department is 7 minutes away from my cottage, so it's not like that we're coming from a very, very far location. I hope you can hear me.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank any members of council. Oh, Madam CA, go ahead.
Thank you. I think council will be aware of these facts, but I'll just provide them for the constituents so she's aware. As you know, we're a volunteer fighting complement. So our firefighters would have left their jobs and rolled the truck. So it's we're not a firefighting organization that have people sitting in the stations waiting for a call. It was probably the driest summer we've had in many years. We were well published on the fire ban. So, and we don't typically give lenience, and I wouldn't suggest that you do so here. And I think that's a big difference between Aurora and Severn is people are leaving their jobs to roll the fire. So I'm actually happy to hear that they got there in 15 minutes because that's a big commitment for our firefighters during the day that have jobs.
Thank you, Councillor Minnings.
Hi, thank you through the chair. My question is for the delegates. Is your first name Alex?
Yes, last name Bratseiko.
Yeah, okay. It's Wanda Minnings speaking. You had mentioned that your guests were aware of the fire ban, and you mentioned that you certainly were. I'm just, is your argument to us about leniency rather than the fact that your property had a fire during a provincial fire ban and certainly during a Severn fire ban?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay, and did you have a fire permit at the time of your infraction?
I was not aware at that time that a fire permit was required. I got a notice from the city that I have to have one, and I purchased one immediately after. So no, I did not have one.
And how long have you owned your property?
2.5 years now.
Yeah, so it's fire permits are required, and it's not up to the township to advise every property owner. Are you following any of the news alerts that are electronically available on the Severn website where you can get updates such as fire bans?
Yes.
Okay, so then you would have said it as you mentioned. And did your guests pay to stay at your cottage?
Yes.
So, okay, thank you very much.
Can I just make one small correction? I have informed them in writing about the fire ban. They have indicated to me after the fact that they have missed my message with respect to the fire ban. So they simply did not read it. And they were not aware about the fire ban in Port Severn. They have indicated to me that have checked, but they didn't check for the municipality of Port Severn. They're themselves are from Vaughan, which I understand is not logical because you are going to a different municipality. You should be checking the fire restrictions within where you're going. But their explanation was that they were not aware and they missed my message. That's
So
what they have indicated.
Subsequent question through the chair. I checked last night again for that date of which you were issued the infraction, and there was a provincial fire ban. You just have to do a Google search. So it's not about Severn, and as a property owner, you're responsible for whoever you let stay on your property, regardless of the reason. So
I agree.
thank you.
Any other members of council? Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, I would like that this matter be received for information and no action taken because I'm very sorry. I don't even think you needed to go on a website. It was on the news. There was a fire ban across Canada almost. So I'm, there's no rationale for this at all. Thank you.
Any further comments? Madam Clerk, thank you very much, Alex.
Okay, thank you so much.
So the motion will read that the delegation by Alex Bratseiko regarding a request for cancellation of contravention of open air burning during a fire ban be received for information and that no action be taken.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Minning, second by Councillor Jansen. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Sorry.
Councillor Minning.
Sorry, just a question related. And I remember at the last meeting, when we're moving to this new format, there was an opportunity to bring something forward related to the agenda. Is under consent. Okay, thank you.
On next delegation is Morshedi Development Incorporated. Go ahead, sir.
I believe the gentleman has not joined us.
Receive for information, Madam Clerk.
Yes, thank you. So the motion then I'll read that the delegation by Morshedi Development regarding a request for waive interest and penalties on a 2023 to 2024 taxes be received for information that no action be taken.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, second by Councillor Minnings. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to D4, Mr. Martinez, Airbnbs. Welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me. Really appreciate, the opportunity to come speak with you
Deputy
all.
Mayor Cox, sorry, sir, just 1 minute. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Cox.
Could you have him turn his volume up? It's hard to hear him, please.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
We can hear you, but you're very quiet.
Okay, I'll try to get closer. Maybe that'll help.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, or I'll speak up. I'm Nick Martinez. I work with Airbnb's public policy team. And I'm here to speak. I was asked to speak really about some of our trust and safety tools and kind of what actions we take when issues arise. I wanted to start by just saying that Airbnb is built on trust. On any given night, 2 million people stay in homes listed on Airbnb across 100,000 different municipalities. And the only thing that keeps this running is trust. And so, to kind of promote that, we built several, tools, teams, and policies in place to help kind of promote responsible and safe stays. I can send over some written materials that cover these that you can review and have access to, but wanted to quickly kind of go through several of them. The first is in 2020, we enacted a global ban on parties. The focus of this is really on hosts who are, condoning this behavior or failing to act when they're kind of alerted to a party. We've long kind of taken, action against guests who are kind of breaking that trust and, throwing unauthorized gatherings and things like that. But we've really shifted the focus to, go after hosts who are enabling this behavior. And as of 2024, since we enacted this global ban on parties, we've seen a drop in about 50% of reported incidents occurring at our listings. And I'll say, globally, fewer than 0.035% of stays have resulted in any sort of party allegation. So it's something that we're taking very seriously and continuing to take action to prevent and remove bad actors from our platform. In 2022, we enacted a high-risk reservation review system. What this is it's a data-driven approach that automatically flags, attempted bookings that have, that would indicate that potentially that the guest is looking to throw a party. We look for things like the age of the guest, if they're booking a property that's, within a certain radius of where they live, their home address, as well as, near holidays, one-night stays, things like that will flag those bookings and take it to a sort of manual review process where we'll reach out and ask a few questions before, just letting it go ahead like that. And since launching that, we've had over 1.4 million guests globally have been blocked from attempting to, book an Airbnb because it's been flagged as potentially problematic. In 2019, we launched a law enforcement portal, which is a streamlined access portal for local law enforcement to communicate directly with our team, as well as request information regarding an investigation if an incident does occur. And then we have also launched a 24-hour neighborhood support tool, which is designed for it's for people that are not on our platform. So not hosts, not guests. You don't have to have an Airbnb account in order to use it, but it's the best way for neighbors who have concerns with Airbnbs to report these issues directly to us, and it allows us to take action. We have a team that staffs that 24/7 that will review the incident and first of all, make sure that it actually is an Airbnb. Surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly, we get quite a few complaints through that line that it turns out it's not an Airbnb listing. Maybe it's a just a long-term rental, private residence that people think is a short-term rental or an Airbnb. But we review that and then get involved. We'll reach out to both the hosts and the guests and try to mitigate that issue. So we've put several of these tools in place, and the vast majority of reservations go on without a hitch. But in the event that something does happen, we take a couple different actions. So the first is for guests, we're very quick to cancel that reservation, take kind of enforcement action against the guest. So that's kind of immediate suspension, and then eventually kind of a permanent removal from our platform. With hosts, it's very similar. The first step is when we're alerted to something, we issue a warning, and then it goes to a suspension and a ban for hosts that are kind of continuing to violate our policies and have complaints levied against them. I think we have these tools in place, and they work very well. The most important part is, in order to act, we have to know about these things. And so there's kind of two separate ways for us to do that. The first is our 24/7 neighborhood support tool that I mentioned earlier. Once we get any sort of complaints through that tool, not only can we take action in the short term and kind of work to mitigate that behavior, but it also adds, a record to the host's account that allows us to kind of take action against them in the future. And secondly, we have a separate government escalations process. And so that's kind of as simple as, now that we're connected, and I know some of staff has my contact information, you can always reach out to me directly, and we can kind of separately go that route to take action against properties and hosts who are violating our policies. That's just kind of a broad overview of some of the tools and resources we have in place. I definitely want to leave time if there's any questions you have for me. I'm not an expert on everything Airbnb, but if I don't have an answer, I'd be happy to follow up and track down an answer for you.
Thank you, Nick. And I think we all have questions, and I'll just start at the very end. I'll start with Councillor McIntyre, and we'll just work our way down.
Sounds good.
Yeah, hi, Nick. Thanks for the presentation. Did you say in 2024 is when you initiated banning either the host or the guests? Is that the date that you set for, and how would we know if you've done that?
Yes, I think you're talking about the global party ban. So that was first enacted in 2020. I think the 2024 I referenced is since the start of 2020 to 2024, we've seen a 50% decrease in reported parties globally.
And a follow-up question through the chair. When you take action against the guest or the host, how do you record that, and how would our municipality know that do you have a list? Do you publish a list, or is there, I don't suppose you publish it, but is there some kind of a record somewhere that you've banned a host from using your service, or a guest for being rowdy or whatever?
That's a good question. I think most of that, my understanding is it kind of remains internal to the platform. So, once someone is taken off our platform, I don't think we're communicating that with municipalities. I will say, and this is good to mention as well, we do have an agreement with VRBO. So when we take action on a guest or a host, we're sharing that information with VRBO, and they've agreed to kind of take the same action, and vice versa. That way, we're running into issues of some folks what we call platform hopping. So they'll, get kicked off Airbnb and turn around and list it on VRBO. And so we've addressed that, and between kind of us and VRBO, we make up the two, I think, kind of main platforms in the industry. Obviously, there's Facebook listings and what have you, but I think between the two of us, we take a lot of it. But in terms of sharing that information with municipalities, I don't think as a standard we're doing that, but I could kind of look into more detail if that's possible.
Okay, and a final question through the chair. You have a 24/7 hotline. Is that number going to be available to the citizenry who have a complaint about from time to time about rowdiness, overbooking, too many people?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share in a follow-up to this. There's both a phone number and an online form that you can fill out, and that's open to the public, and we really encourage folks to use that.
Madam Clerk, sorry.
Thank you. That phone number and website contact information is on our short-term rentals page and has been for a couple of years. So.
Thank you. Councillor Minnings.
Hi, thank you through the chair. So just to let you know, we've got a room full of people here who I'm assuming are coming because of your request to give us some information. And you did, just to be transparent, you did reach out to all of council by email in August, asking to come and do this presentation. Okay, so is Airbnb as a company pro or against licensing short-term rentals in municipalities?
Yeah, I would say it varies by municipality, kind of what we are kind of promoting. I think broadly and very generally, we're not against licensing or registration programs.
How many Airbnbs because your company is the brand Airbnb, how many Airbnbs do you have registered in Severn Township?
Yeah, I knew that was going to be a question that came up. I don't have a number in front of me. I can follow up with staff and have a number. I was looking into it, but there's a bit of a issue in the way that we kind of map our data, and so I wasn't able to get something in advance of this.
Okay, another question. How many complaints have you received in Severn Township about the Airbnbs?
Yeah, I have a request pending right now with our trust and safety team to see. Nothing that's reached my level, but internally, we may have received some, and I can check on that.
Okay, so I think that I certainly was expecting information about that's relevant to Severn Township after you reaching out to us, knowing that it had been discussed at council, and what you provided was just general information that's already on your website. So I look forward to getting some details. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Okay, I won't ask the same questions. When you said something about rowdy guests, you said to cancel the reservation. So does that mean if I have an Airbnb beside me and at 2:00 in the morning, it's loud and I call your 24-hour line, what do you do then? I'd just like to know the process. Like what happens then? Like, is that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first step is when that line is called, excuse me, we have our operator kind of ask questions, gets a sense of what's going on. They investigate first to see, is this an Airbnb property?
Right.
And if that's the case, they reach out to both the guests and the hosts to kind of let them know about the situation, try to get a better understanding of what's going on. Ask the guest to, obviously stop that behavior, ask the host to get involved. And I think depending on the response of both of those parties is when kind of additional action is taken. And in situations like that, we make it very easy for hosts to cancel the reservation without it facing any sort of penalties. right? I think, generally, right, if a host, if there's no incident occurring, if a host just cancels a reservation on a guest, they're kind of on the hook for that. But in situations like that, we reimburse and we just, do what we can to kind of end the situation without any sort of penalty for anyone involved.
Okay,
Fine.
so you're saying you call people and they're supposed to do something and stop being noisy, and then that's it. And
Right,
then if they cancel it, those people are supposed to leave the next day. Where's the follow-up? Does that go with the host or the Airbnb?
That goes with both, right? So it depending on what kind of action the host takes in response, that's where we get into sort of the penalties, right? So suspension, removal from our platform, things like that.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question. How many times does a host have to have complaints before they're removed from your platform?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's not like a super clear cut. I think the way that our trust and safety team handles it, and this is where I'm not like a subject matter expert. It's kind of weighted just based on, I guess, severity and what occurred. I think we typically, it's like a strike system, right? So we go from warning to suspension to permanent removal.
Okay, and at any time, do you let the township or the municipality or the city know about these issues?
Yeah, we don't. I think is a practice generally for any sort of occurrence. Share this information. I think when it reaches a more like severe matter, those are situations in which we'll communicate and kind of work actively with local law enforcement. But I think for general complaints, we're not as a practice, sharing those.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you knew the municipality had a licensing bylaw, would that make a difference of you letting them know either the following day or on the Monday that there was an issue so that they were made aware of it?
Yeah. Sorry, was there more to the question?
No, just the fact that let's say that the municipality had a licensing program, and I'm sure that you are aware of which municipalities have licensing programs. Yes?
Yeah. Well, we do our best to kind of keep up with
Okay.
that.
Anyway, all right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
for answering these, Nick. It's not personal. It's just that this is very dear and near to all of our hearts, and there's issues with it, so we're just looking for some clarity, and we have some questions. So, Councillor Brennan, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Nick, for the presentation today. I have one question and if you find you're in a position to offer Severn specific information, if there's any chance in providing that, I would like to know of the complaints you get, how many are actually under your purview at Airbnb and how many are other? And if there are other, what do you know about them? Are they just cottages, renting cottagers out? What are they? Are they your competition? If you had any information like that, that to me would be useful in making a forthcoming decision, as this council will be doing. Secondly, and possibly our clerk will know this, but on the law enforcement panel that you put together in 2019, do our bylaw officers, do municipal bylaw officers have access to that program?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know it's there's some sort of verification that it's we do, to make sure it's local law enforcement. I'm not sure how they define law enforcement, so I can double check on that as well.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Some of the questions I would have asked have already been asked. I'd also like to know the Severn specific information. I think that we're doing a report that's going to come forward to council. I think it'd be important to have that information before the report comes forward. I do have a question. So We do know there's communities that already have licenses out there. Our community does not have a license. Is there a difference in the level of complaints that come forward to Airbnb, whether there's a licensing regime in the community or whether there's not a licensing regime?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and I don't have the data, or haven't done like a study on this. I would say anecdotally, I don't think there's a significant difference in number of complaints. I think the complaints come in irregardless of whether or not a short-term accommodation is licensed or not, and that kind of remains pretty static. I think what licensing can give you though is I guess more leverage as a municipality to to enact certain penalties against it in addition to what we do. But what we do in terms of enforcement of our policies, and it kind of doesn't license or no license, we're still going to take the same action against hosts and guests who kind of violate those policies.
Thank you. Okay. Just another question. So wayfinding on your website, where does an individual, we've got a lot of residents here right now, where do they go to find this section of your website where they can report a concern?
Yeah, I will send as a follow-up, I can send the link directly to this site if that works.
Is it, I'm looking at the site right now. Is it as easy as scrolling to the bottom and under the support area where it says report neighborhood concern?
Yeah, so it's if you do a Google search for neighborhood support, Airbnb neighborhood support, it'll be, at least on my browser, it's the first link that shows up.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Nick, for coming today. A lot of good questions here. Do you have any stats on numbers? How many of your clients have been kicked off the site? That's my first question.
Is that in Severn or broadly?
Yeah, no, just if you have, you said you don't have Severn, but just in general, like how many steps has it taken? How many have actually been kicked off your site? And then my follow-up is, what if any ramifications if people continue to rent their place out? Can they come back on Airbnb down the road? Is there a trial period to come back? But if you can answer the first question, what does it take to get kicked off? Does it ever happen?
Yeah, it does happen. I don't have a number of I guess total hosts and guests who have been kicked off. I think it does happen pretty, not pretty frequently, but in my course of work here with Airbnb, I mean, I personally, worked with local governments to remove, a number of listings and hosts. And I think to answer your question, typically, we start with a suspension, for several months for the hosts. They're not allowed to have their listing booked. If they come back from that and there's no issues, no reports, they're able to come back. But if they come back from the suspension and have more reports of issues, they'll be kind of permanently taken off the platform.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, so I do have some questions, but do you have any other questions, members of council? Okay, so Nick, I just want to ask, when you're booking this, and do you ask the guest, actually, do you ask the host whether they live on water and sewers or if they live on a septic system? Like, is that a question as part of your, I'm not sure what you call it. Thank you. Registering? And do you know the difference, you yourself?
Yeah, to my knowledge,
I can tell you the difference. I don't want to put you on the spot. Because here's the issue, Nick. This is what's wrong. So we're a rural municipality. We do have areas that are on water and sewer. But when you live in a rural municipality, you're on a septic system. And if you have one bedroom, your septic is designed to allow, let's say, 3 people. So on your listings and what we have in one of our areas, we have a home that may have 30 people in it at one time. It only has 4 bedrooms. So really it only will allow for 8 people to run a septic system safely. So when you have 30 people, now you create a problem of possibly a septic system malfunctioning. And most of these places are on water. So now you may contaminate the water, not to mention contaminating the neighbors' yards. So is that one of your questions when you're renting these Airbnbs out or these homes out? Do you ask that question? Is that part of your question? Like, I don't know how it works. Or maybe explain to council and the people in the audience, like if I was to phone and ask for a certain rental, what do you ask of me?
Yeah, that's a good question. I unfortunately I don't have the answer to that. To my knowledge, I don't believe that we're asking about, whether they're on sewer or septic.
I think what you need to do is you need to go back to who's ever in charge, because this is a problem throughout all of Ontario. Most of Ontario is rural. So the people that are coming out of the large urban areas or they're coming from overseas do not understand what a septic system is. So when you rent something, and I presume you're not asking how many people are actually going to rent the house that you're renting out, right? So that needs to be another question, because what you're doing is you're creating chaos for us. You're creating problems down the road. And I understand you're running a business, but as part of that business, to be a good business person, you need to ask the right questions when you're renting homes out. So you not only protect yourself, you're protecting the neighbors, because what they do is they're destructive to the whole neighborhood when they do this. And I don't know if you heard the conversation beforehand, fire banned in all of Ontario, and now you had someone coming to make a deputation thinking they should be forgiven the $500 when we send our firefighters out to put out a fire. So that is also something else that should be part of your platform when you approve someone renting your properties. Like we need to work together. That's what needs to happen. So we're not picking on you. Like, you're only the messenger, and I understand that, but this needs to go back to whoever's in charge of Airbnb so that we can all work collectively together to make it a better place to live. Correct?
Definitely. No, I would agree. And I think it's good that we're, having this conversation. And, I think there are ways that we can work together. There's different, tools outside of the kind of standard trust and safety that I mentioned. But, we have programs like what we call our responsible hosting pages, so that when, a host is signing up to host in a certain municipality, we can work with y'all to develop language that is shared with them prior, right? Things like covering the fire ban and things like that. Like, there's certain ways that we can help kind of share some of this information and make sure that hosts are made aware.
So just one other question, Nick. When there's a problem in one of these Airbnbs, if the host doesn't live in the country and you can't get a hold of the host, like, what happens in a situation like that when you do have a problem? And it's continuous. It's just time and time again. And like, is there some sort of mechanism from your side that you could help us with?
Yeah, I think when we're not able to get a hold of the hosts, or I guess the guest in certain scenarios, depending on the severity, that's when we'll kind of elevate to local law enforcement as well. But we don't, they don't send me in, right? So it's
No, but I think, Nick, to this, just what I've said, the Airbnb needs to be aware of what's happening throughout the whole province. And it's not isolated to Severn at all. But if you could take that back, and hopefully they come back with some answers for us. Deputy Mayor Cox, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair. I do know that there are places on Airbnb that have responsible hosts. They do ask those questions. They do state they're on a septic system. They do state only how many people can be there. Some of them I've read actually have cameras who focus in, and if you're over, they will contact you and tell you. They will have lists that show where the garbage is, where the recycle is, what you do, all those things are there. I mean, I had a friend who went to one and they even told them you can't use 2-ply toilet paper because we're on a septic. So there are responsible hosts. I don't want us all to get the wrong idea. There are people out there and they actually get reviewed. If I read it, and like a host can get a plus review, and people utilize those and do it. The problem is, you well know, and people here know, is that it's the bad apples that are causing this problem. I mean, no offense, in our municipality, we may have had 5 in the past 8 years, and they're the ones that are causing the problem. They're the ones that are going to cost our municipality money to license and enforce, and it's not fair. And these are the hosts that should not just be banned. They should be told no from you, and other ones should be sent out. You should be sending this to verbal, but they still will go online on Facebook, and it's not your fault, but they still will go on there. And this is the problem municipalities have with many things. It's always those people who do this. And if there's any way we can work together and you can work together to solve this problem, because no offense, there are places that need Airbnbs. There are little towns, and your cousin's getting married and at Horseshoe Valley, and you need a place to stay. There is a need for those. And as long as the host is in the house and there is a bedroom to be rented or 2 bedrooms to be rented, those are required, and they do help the economy in municipalities. But it's a sad day that 6 people or 10 people in a municipality are now going to cost all our taxpayers money. And I think Airbnb needs to hear this. Thank you.
Councillor Minings.
Thank you, through the mayor. Yeah, I do have an additional question. Can you talk about how Airbnb makes money off the listings? So I'm not familiar with that. I've never been on your site. But how do you charge fees? Is it commission, flat rate?
Yeah, so we actually just changed kind of our system of how we're, what we make off of each transaction. Right now we are charging, I want to say it's 14%, and this just changed like a month ago, so the numbers might not be exact, but I believe we charge whatever the host is charging for the rental, we take 14% of that.
Okay, thank you. So, and I get it that you mentioned you're global, or you have listings globally. Are you a Canadian business, Airbnb?
No, we're based in the States, in California.
Okay, so as a company, Airbnb, you're operating as a business in Severn. You're a catalyst, or you're a portal for homeowners to rent out their homes. And that's fine. And you are costing the municipality money, by the way, for enforcement and use of all of our services. Do you pay taxes to the cities and municipalities for running your business in these? Because I know businesses do pay business taxes, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, I could follow up. I know we are, contributing taxes. I could follow up with kind of a list of what taxes exactly were.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? So Nick, sorry. You've got a lot of questions. Hopefully you can get back to us, and I don't know, in a timely fashion, because we've got some decisions we need to make. And I think, Madam CEO, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, thank you, through your worship. I can answer one of Councillor Minning's questions, not on the Airbnb business per se, but it's not an underground economy anymore. When you're a host, Airbnb collects HST and they have to remit it to CRA now. So in the early days, that was not a thing, and people talked about it being, an underground thing. But CRA came out with a ruling a couple of years ago that says Airbnb, VRBO, whoever it is, must remit to CRA and send a log and whatever. So the owners are definitely paying HST. I don't know how they pay corporate taxes on their Airbnb business, but on the actual rental, they are paying HST. And if your municipality has a municipal accommodation tax, so we don't, but Barrie per se does, they have to remit that as well. So there are definitely taxes being collected.
Nick, how many other municipalities have you gone to where you've given presentations like you've done today? Have there been many?
Not many, no.
Okay.
Not many.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you for having me, and you've left me with plenty of follow-up, so I'll get back to you with some of this information.
Thank you, Nick. Have a good day. Madam Clerk, do you have a motion?
Thank you. So the motion reads that the delegation by Nick Martinez from Airbnb regarding Airbnbs in Severn be received for information.
Mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Minnings, second by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? That's carried.
If I can suggest maybe a 5-minute break, just
Okay, we'll take a
I expect
5-minute
most of
break.
these folks are going to want to clear out.
accurate, but definitely 1978, you can see some grainy black and white imagery for many parts of the township. So there is quite a lot of years. If anyone's listening on YouTube, maps.simcoe.ca, it is a pretty cool resource.
Thank you.
Okay, Member Cox.
Yeah, those were used as cottages. That was considered a cottage area. I remember them like they've been there for, anyway, my question is R1XX and R1YY, like, what does that mean? Thank you.
Go ahead, Emily.
Thank you through the chair to Member Cox. Those are sort of just placeholders to allow staff once we assign the site-specific zoning. So for example, it would be R1-38 and R1-39. The XX and YY are just placeholders to remind us to insert those numbers.
Thank you. And the other one is, so they're going to have one piece of property that surrounds that other person who's in the middle, who obviously doesn't have an issue. And they're not going to do anything more with it.
Yeah, exactly. So technically the properties will remain separate. That's
Yes.
the understanding, but exactly, they operate essentially as one.
I don't want to be nosy, but is this something that could end up being pushed together as one property by the province? You know how, or are they in different names? Because we've seen that problem.
Yeah, the merging on.
Merging, that's the word I'm looking for. Through the chair.
I think Katie knows about merging.
Through the chair to Member Cox, a little bit of background here. Township staff have been working with these folks for a few years to help them legalize this. In this situation, I legitimately think they did not know that they were doing something wrong. There is a cultural difference here and a different way of life, if you will. So when they first approached us, one of the first things they did is they got a survey done because we weren't sure how many properties were here. There's a lot of parts on different plans historically. So they do have two separate properties. One of them must have been created by severance or by consent because they were historically held in the same ownership. But there used to be a rule, once a severance, always a severance, or once a consent, always a consent. There is an ability to change that now, but they would have to go through a process through the Committee of Adjustment to change it, to merge those parcels. So they may want to merge them in the future. They've indicated right now they're happy with them being separate, but they definitely use the two parcels completely as one, and they don't have any further plans for this property. It is in a settlement area, as Ms. Lemieux said, so there may be possibilities in the future for them to subdivide it or to sell it to someone who might want to subdivide it. But for right now, these folks are very happy to just own this larger piece of property in kind of cottage country for them.
No, I was just worried that it could be merged, but if it's so safe the way it is, then that's fine. I just didn't want them to end up one day going, I thought we had two pieces and now we only have one, which has happened. Thank you.
Member Minnings.
I thank you through the chair. I just have two kind of housekeeping questions for my own knowledge, and I'm on slide 14. It's the draft zoning bylaw schedule. It shows R1s around it and SR2s on the other side of the trail. Am I to assume, well, I guess my question is, are there any other rural lands that are in this? Because some of the squares, the blocks of land, don't have R1 in them. So I don't know if, because what you started with was this is a rural property and we want to move it to R1 designation. So what's the neighboring? Do we know?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. That's a really great question. Our schedule on schedule 14, we do try and simplify it by kind of grouping those areas as, you know, all the properties across the street are R1, all the properties to the rear are SR2. I don't believe within that screen capture that there's any other rural parcels. So you'll be able to correct me, but I don't believe so.
Go ahead, Katie.
Through the chair to Member Minnings, typically the RU zone is not utilized within the within settlement areas. Typically, it's only within our rural area. So we're not sure. We did try and look some time ago to try and understand why historically there was that RU. We do think maybe that RU parcel used to be a separate piece of property and it was merged with this one. But as you can see, if you have really good eyesight, the zoning map that's publicly available through our website, again, through the county's GIS mapping, it does show there are no other rural parcels immediately in this area. There's lots of R1. There's some commercial properties on Matchedash Bay there. The SR2, obviously, on the waterfront. So there are no other rural parcels in this immediate area. And that was actually a suggestion from staff, was to remove that RU zoning. I think we've talked about this before with council and committee. When you have a zone boundary, it acts as a lot line. So you have to measure setbacks from that zone boundary. So that just further complicated this application because there was that 2 zonings on one property. So we had recommended through this process that they just eliminate that zone boundary. And in fact, they could have had an agricultural building on the rural parcel, which would mean they wouldn't have needed the R1 exception. But we just felt for the future use of that property or future development of that property, it was better just to clean it up and put it under one zoning.
Okay, thank you. That makes perfect sense. And my second question is about the buildings, the existing buildings that aren't residences. That's the other part of what you're asking. Are they being brought forward as part of this application because they're bigger than what might be a regular shed, which is, I think, 160 square feet or something now? Is that why? So are you looking for an exemption? I'm just want a little bit more understanding about these buildings. Thanks.
Yeah, through the chair. So that's a great question. So on the southern parcel, we'll call it, the one accessory structure is over the minimum size. The other structure, again, based on zoning, not building code. The second structure, I believe, is fine from a size perspective. It's just that setback to the lot line that's too close. And then the other structure, yes, exactly. So the 2 orange structures, the first one, the larger square, we are asking for relief to allow that to be a bit larger than permitted. And then, of course, the setbacks. And then the property to the north, that square in the back that we were talking about, I believe, again, from a size perspective, we are okay. It's just essentially allowing it to exist on its own on the property without a dwelling. Because typically, of course, you require a primary dwelling before you can have an accessory type of structure. So I hope that clarifies.
Okay, if there are no further comments, I declare the public meeting on this proposal is now closed. And the recommendation, Allison, is that a motion? If we could have that, that'd be great.
The motion reads that planning report P25-041 dated November 5th, 2025, with respect to zoning bylaw amendment application file number Z2509 for the subject lands located at 12967 and 12975 County Road 16 be received for information, and that comments received at the public meeting be considered as part of any recommendation or report for a future council meeting.
Okay, we have a mover. Moved by member Cox, second by member Minnings. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Have a good day. Next on the agenda, we have Nancy Neal from Watson and Associates regarding wastewater rate study. Good morning. Good morning, Nancy.
We'll get through it quick. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, I guess. See, now you got me thinking lunch and it's afternoon. Yeah, absolutely. Is that better? Okay, thank you. I just want to note there is one slide that we updated yesterday versus what you had in your council agenda packages. And when we get to that, I'll note what that change is. Okay, it's minor, but I want to point it out at the beginning. So what you're going to see is slightly different than yesterday. So
We have been working with staff for quite some time this year to undertake an update to your water and wastewater rates. That includes looking at all of your current water and wastewater needs over the next 10 years. We've looked at cost recovery options for capital, as well as operating, built in some inflation, considered the asset management or life cycle needs that are coming due, not just in this 10 years, but also looked longer term to ensure that your rates have enough funding built into it to put money away in reserves so that when future assets come due, the funds will be there and the rates will support having to do the replacement needs and upgrades that are required. We've also embraced growth in here, and we'll speak a little bit about that as we get into more of the numbers so that you understand a little bit more of that. And then, of course, we have some recommended new rates starting for 2026 and over the forecast period. We also have in here at the end some information about your water license renewal, the water financial plan that the ministry requires as part of the licensing renewal that needs to happen every 5 years to get your water license issued again. Next slide. Okay, great, you're there. As many of you may know, over the past 2.5 decades, there's been extensive legislation put in place for the protection of water and for the water and wastewater systems as a whole. They include the Safe Drinking Water Act. That is the act that requires through the regulation 45307, the water financial plan and the licensing to be renewed every 5 years. The Sustainable Sewage or Water and Sewage Systems Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Water Opportunities Act, some of which are no longer in place, but really over the last 2.5 decades, set out the rules that are still followed for municipalities to ensure full cost recovery and that the systems are being dealt with so that there's protection against another Walkerton crisis happening. In addition to that, there was a municipal infrastructure strategy put out that helps municipalities as well in dealing with the systems. And of course, the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act actually is the piece of legislation that requires you to deal with asset management. So all of those play into what we consider as part of the rate. Next slide. Just as a highlight, your current 2025 rates include a minimum charge that includes up to 68 cubic meters per quarter of volume. Your customers all pay the same regardless of which system they're receiving their water or wastewater from, and they pay $224.23 a quarter. RAMA it is based on the same minimum charge. Although one bill gets sent out, there's 17 customers that, and that 3,800 is really just 17 times the current rate for any other property. In addition, for larger volume users of water, if someone goes over that 68 cubic meters of usage per month, they start paying $2.96 per cubic meter for the water. On the wastewater side of things, again, a minimum charge in Waive, West Shore, and Coldwater, where the system is provided, $223.07 per quarter. RAMA, you're not providing service to, and then over that 68 cubic meters, they're paying $3.47 currently per cubic meter. Next slide. We've looked at what your current customer profile is. And right now, through your water system, assuming RAMA is one customer, not the 17, you have just under 2,250 customers on your water systems and just over 1,960 customers on your wastewater system. So there are a few areas in the township that are not receiving wastewater. They're still on septic systems, but they are getting municipal water services. Next slide. As mentioned, we are embracing growth in the forecast. That we base on the growth that was identified in the development charge study that was undertaken last year. And we also look at what the average volumes have been, both on the West Shore and Coldwater system, where we anticipate most of the growth to happen. In Coldwater, the average annual usage is around 140 cubic meters for residential. In West Shore, it's lower than that. They're using about 120 cubic meters. So what we have done is where there is growth in West Shore or Coldwater, we've used those figures to predict how much more volume and how many more customers that will result in over the forecast. Because they're lower than that minimum quarterly bill, we haven't predicted additional revenues coming in from the growth units on that per cubic meter basis. They'll all be paying that minimum charge. Now, there may be ultimately someone that goes over it, and staff, as an implementation, will track that and charge them if they do fall into a higher volume usage going forward. Next slide. Similarly, for wastewater, we have predicted out the number of customers out to 2035. Of course, wastewater is billed similar to water, so we've used the same volumes that are anticipated for new residential customers. Although there are anticipation of non-residential growth as well, it's very difficult based on the size of a building to determine whether there'll be a large or a small user. So for conservativeness, when we do the rate studies, we don't add in additional non-residential customers. Of course, what that will do is hopefully when they do come in, provide a little bit of a surplus that will help to mitigate fluctuations in costs that may actually come to fruition, and or be able to then, if there's a surplus at the end of the year, help to put a little bit more away for that asset management and to help mitigate other future fluctuations that may be because of climate or other aspects that come forward. Next slide. So for the capital infrastructure, we have looked at your 2025 budget. We've worked with staff and made some changes, also looking at some of the 2026 budget data where they knew that there was changes coming forward to embrace that, and then really inflating out over the forecast period with the capital for life cycle and that growth related need based on the information that was in the development charge study and your asset management data. So we've looked at need, timing, and costs for all of those types of works. Again, they may change over time, and staff will be reviewing that through each budget process. If growth slows down, some of those growth projects may need to be delayed. If growth speeds up, some of those projects will potentially need to be brought forward. And that's something that, based on the forecast we have here, is an estimate. Next slide. What that results in for water in 2025, your capital forecast was just over $1.3 million. Over the 26 to 35 forecast period, with the life cycle or asset management works, as well as a little bit of studies and growth works, there is over $39 million worth of need in capital expenditures anticipated in that 10-year forecast. Next slide. Similarly, for wastewater, there was just over 1.7 million for 2025 in the budget, and over that next 10-year forecast period, out to 2035, there is extensive capital works required, mostly due to growth, if that comes forward in Coldwater and West Shore, but upwards of almost $77 million worth of works that would be needed. Next slide. As part of funding all of that, of course, we have looked at funding from reserves that you have and that will continue to build through the rates, development charges that are put in place to help recover the growth-related costs, as well as, in some situations, debt, some of which might be growth-related debt. If you have to put some of those works in place to allow growth to happen, there may be, and that happens with water, wastewater, growth-related debt that will then be recovered through the development charges as well. and then non-growth related debt as well. And then there are some grants that are anticipated as well in the forecast. Next slide. What that looks like for the water and wastewater, we have provided, a balanced forecast, ensuring that where we have development charge revenues, we can utilize those. There is about $7.8 million in grants anticipated for wastewater works. And then you will see a section with debentures, and that's a majority of which is growth-related debentures, but there are some non-growth related debentures as well, about 2.4 million for water and 5.1 million for wastewater that will have to be funded through the rates. And then, of course, there's also the reserves and reserve funds you have currently and in the future that will help to fund all of those works. Next slide. Understanding that asset management component, you do have some infrastructure in the water system that dates back to the 1940s, most of which is newer than that, and back to the 1970s for your wastewater systems. The total value of your water infrastructure that is in the ground today is almost $64 million. And for wastewater infrastructure, it is almost $84 million in today's dollars. So what that translates into for your current customers is over $28,000 that has been invested for every single water customer in the township, and almost $43,000 per customer for wastewater infrastructure that's been put in place. And so there is an extensive amount of works that you need to maintain and eventually replace through asset management. Next slide. What this shows you is a little bit more detail of the components of the water and wastewater infrastructure that's in place to come up with those amounts, just based purely on average useful life. What we're seeing in the forecast is about $12 million that would be required to be replaced for water, and just over 5.4 million for wastewater. Now, depending on condition, as we get closer to those actual average useful lives, as well as other works that may be going on for growth-related upgrades, where you might be doing some replacements of components at the same time on the existing infrastructure while you're in there. What has actually been embraced in the forecast is a little less on the water side of things and a little more on the wastewater side of things. And this is something staff look at annually to make sure condition is still allowed to make something go past its useful life. It's not broke, you're not going to fix it, is what they consider. But what that does is anything that then falls in year 11 plus outside this forecast period is really all over $130 million that will need to be replaced at some point in the future. And that's where we do a calculation to say, if you were putting enough money away every year and investing it, how much would you have to put away so that you would actually have the money when every single asset comes due for replacement without having to increase rates, and spike them or take out a lot of debt. And that equates to about $4.66 million in today's dollars. Pardon? Per year. Yep. Next slide. As noted, we've also looked at your operating expenditures for both systems and have provided inflationary impacts at 2% annually for all expenditures, so that we're building rates that are in inflated dollars. And then there's some miscellaneous operating revenues that are in the past have been pretty constant, and we've assumed that they will continue at a constant rate as well as what you've been getting. Next slide. Just to show graphically what this means when you look at your operating budget, there is in the blue section those pure day-to-day operating costs that you have, and that you can see is just slightly moving with inflation. The burgundy or red color that you see on top of that is the capital related portion. So those debt charges, once you've issued debt, you have to make annual principal and interest payments, as well as transfers to reserves. That's what that component is. And that will fluctuate based on actuals with capital and when works go forward. Next slide. Similarly, we've provided that on the wastewater side of things. You'll see that, there is extensive capital works in operating and quite a bit more on the debt required for that side. So, over the forecast period, you're moving from 2.2 million almost in operating expenditures required, including those capital components, up to almost 8 million by the end of the forecast period that will have to be funded. Next slide. But because looking at West Shore and Coldwater, one was on average 140 cubic meters, the other at 120. What we've done is we've taken the average of that of the 130 cubic meters to give you an idea of what the annual bill would be for a customer using 130 cubic meters. Of course, in that situation, or sorry, I actually have it at 120 here. I'm sorry. I've actually done the calculation on 120 cubic meters. Sorry about that. But what that means at 120 cubic meters, you're still not going over that minimum charge. And so where you'd be paying in 2025, $897 almost for water, you'd be going up to $1,265 in the 10-year forecast period. On the wastewater side, you'd be paying $892 today, and you'd be going up to almost $1,400 by the end of the forecast period. Next slide. Again, I'm sorry, I did this at 120 just to show that combined bill of $1,800 almost you'd be paying today, going up to over $2,800 in 10 years. Just want to talk a little bit about how we set rates and the different types of rate structures out there. There are a multitude of different things that other municipalities utilize. There are a number of considerations to be taken into account when setting rates. Of course, the full cost recovery of your systems that the legislation requires you to do is one of the key. When putting a rate structure in place, the other thing to determine is the cost of administering it. So some rate structures are very complicated, where there may be a different fixed rate based on the meter size, and then there could be 3 or 4 different blocks of volume rates based on how much volume you use. That can be an increasing or a decreasing block. The more complicated the rate structure, quite often, the more costly it is for staff to administer that. So that is something that's considered. As well, what a lot of people don't realize is regardless of how much water or you use or how much wastewater you produce, most of the costs are fixed for water and wastewater services. You have to treat it. It has to be ready. You have to have the storage. You have to have the mains in place. You've got to be cleaning them and flushing them and maintaining them. So the majority of your costs, probably 90 to 95% of costs are fixed, regardless of whether someone turns a tap on or flushes a toilet. And so what's important is to make sure that your rates are set at a level where there's security there, that if, for example, in a very wet year, when volumes may be down, you're still recovering what you need to through your rates. On the flip side, if there's years that are very dry and people are utilizing more water, they may be charged a bit more because they might be going over that minimum bill, but that provides a little bit more funding to put into reserves to mitigate future years where it's the opposite. So again, what municipalities are trying to do is make sure that, they're setting a rate structure to ensure that you don't have huge fluctuations where, because volume usage, maybe because of weather or conservation or other things was down last year. Now we all of a sudden have to increase and spike our rates. We're trying to smooth that increase out over a longer period of time and mitigate those ups and downs. And then, of course, the revenue stability plays into that and make sure that you have the money required to move forward with the capital, not just the replacement of capital, but not all growth related capital is 100% recoverable through development charges. And so there are components that the balance of the system will also benefit from, and you want to make sure that you have the money in place to pay for that portion of that non-growth related portion to allow the growth to go forward. Because without the water or wastewater service in place, you can't issue building permits quite often to allow that growth to happen. And then, of course, there's equity. And as much as it's difficult at times for everyone to have absolute pure equity, there's the other factors to keep in place. Pure equity would just have a volume rate and everyone would pay just based on the volume they utilize. But the rates would probably fluctuate a lot more because of, annual usage. And so that makes it difficult to ensure the revenue stability, making sure you're at full cost recovery and making sure that, you're not having those large fluctuations. So all of those things go into the consideration of setting the rates. Based on your current rate structure, you do achieve your full cost recovery. You are keeping the administration costs as low as possible, and trying to ensure that revenue stability to mitigate those large changes. At the same time, you're recovering the majority of your fixed costs, regardless of how much water or wastewater is utilized, which is, you're way ahead of some other municipalities in that, on that side of it. And then, still attempting for equality, but like I said, unless you're just on a volume rate, there's different equality in any other type of rate structure. Next slide. There has been questions before, when I've been before you in the past about potentially providing subsidies or some type of discount for certain types of customers. And that is certainly, something that is up to you as council to decide. Some of the things, if you're looking at that we want to point out that you need to consider is that, would that have, reduce any potential for the full cost recovery. If you still want full cost recovery, if you provide one customer with a discount, all the other customers have to pay a bit more to subsidize that because you're not bringing funding in from the property tax base, which would be inequitable, especially to those customers in rural areas that aren't getting the municipal services. So that's part of keeping everything in the rates themselves. You have to understand, and that again, maybe for some municipalities, they are still willing to charge some a little bit more to give a break to others, but it's something to consider. You would need to set up specific criteria or parameters and set up a program where people would have to apply for it, provide, some personal information, which may or may not be something that people are comfortable with. But there'd be a cost to administering that as well. And there will always be someone on the cusp that will just be a little bit off and not get the discount. So it comes back to an equity question that you guys have to do. But there is a cost to that to administer it. And that's something that you should take into consideration if you want it. If the rate structure was changed from a minimum bill to lower the volume that you get within that minimum bill and start charging that cost per cubic meter for anything over a lower minimum, keep in mind right now that with the 68 cubic meters, that's about 272 cubic meters a year. If you stay within the 68 that you can get. So you'd have to drop it below that 120 or 140, depending on the system, to even see a change in getting more through the volume rate. So it would be a significant difference. And then, of course, if you're looking at just treating everyone the same on the system, if someone's getting a discount, their increases annually year over year are going to be lower than those that would have to make up and subsidize those customers getting a break, and they would have higher rate increases as well, which can then make it difficult for some of those. You think of a family of 4 or 5, and all of a sudden they have to pay even higher rates. It may become more difficult for them as well because you're giving others a break. So you have to balance all of that. The minimum charge or minimum bill could be eliminated entirely, and you could put a base charge in that everyone pays and set that at a rate, and then the balance coming from your volume rates as well. And as I mentioned early on, that base charge could vary based on the size of the meter you have as well. So there's a multitude of options out there for rate structures, but again, you also have to consider the administration costs of that and the equity, and still ensure you're getting that revenue stability and full cost recovery. So those are all things that I just want to put out there because I know it's come up in the past. Moving on, what we have done is a comparison of other municipalities based on the 130 cubic meters a year. Right now, you'd be paying $897 for water, $892, so a total of $1,789 for your current 2025 rates. Looking to 2026, that would be slightly up to $1,861 combined. And then keep in mind, all of the other comparators here are 2025 rates. So I'm not sure where they may be going in 2026. You are, ranked on the higher side of your comparators right now. You do have multiple systems, and in some systems, very low users in them too, which can sometimes, based on the age of the systems, how they're functioning in that, every municipality is different. So it's hard to do a comparison, but if we go back to the next slide as to where we were 5 years ago, when we did the last study in 2021, you were actually almost at the highest. So other municipalities have over the last few years started to increase their rates at a higher rate than what you have been. And so currently you're lower in the comparison than some of where you were 5 years ago. Okay. Just thought I'd give you that comparison to put it into perspective. As I mentioned, if you can go 2 more slides over, the other component and study that you got was related to that financial plan that's required for your license renewal. So all municipalities, as I mentioned, are required once every 5 years to renew their water license to be able to provide the service. And part of the licensing requirement is to provide a financial plan. It is an accounting document slide that really takes your rate study that is done on a cash basis and it converts it to a full accrual accounting basis, which is normally what's done looking in the past based on actuals as a year-end financial statement. And so we're trying to predict the future of that. As I mentioned, one of 5 key components only required for the water system, not required at the moment for the wastewater system because it's through the Clean Water Act. The financial plan must begin in the year your license is expiring, which is 2026, and it has to be a minimum of 6 years. We have gone out the full 10 years because we had the rate study to base that on. And so the financial plan actually that you'll be submitting to the province, it includes more than the minimum requirements right now. Sorry, next slide. It is considered by the province a living document. They realize you're trying to project year-end amounts. So they realize that actuals will change over every year. And that's why they understand that if there's significant changes, what they get 5 years from now as what the actuals were in the past may not be the same. And what they see in your annual financial information returns will be different. Where there's significant changes, some municipalities do resubmit within the 5 years. You can do that. You don't have to though, but you do have to submit once every 5 years. The plans, we've been doing these since the requirement came into effect for municipalities. Our approach has been accepted by the province, and we've continued to use that same approach in this as we have in your past financial plans. In addition, the requirements do include that, Public Sector Accounting Board formatting that we've used. They do have to be made available to the public upon request for free if anyone wants a copy of it. And you have to put it on your website once it's approved by council. So most people will locate it there as well. Next slide, Murray. The intent of the legislation is really to help municipalities and the ministry know that you are planning to keep your system in order to mitigate, another Walkerton, as well as to ensure that you're embracing, capital, operating costs, growth, life cycle, and that is what we've done there. It must have approval and a council resolution that has to be submitted with the report itself, as well as the other documents that are required for the renewal. The next slide really kind of tries to give, for non-accounting people, an understanding of some of the slight differences between what you will see in the rate study and what you will see in the financial plan. So in accounting terms of full accrual basis, when we talk about capital expenditures, what's really important is tangible capital assets, something that is being spent that will result in an asset. What is a little bit different is studies. Studies don't result in an asset. So they are reclassified in the financial plan as an operating expense. When we look at one of the biggest things is amortization. When you're doing your rate study, you're not trying to write down your assets to a net book value of 0 at its end of its useful life. What you're trying to do is make sure you're actually looking at the future replacement costs and building into your rates to be able to replace that. But for the financial plan, we have to do those amortization or depreciation calculations. So that's one of the main changes between the two documents. As well, in your rate study, your debt payments, you have to pay the principal and interest payments every year. In accounting terms, interest is considered an expense. Principal is a debt reduction. So it's really just some changes in the terminology and the way we classify certain expenses and revenues between the two documents. But the financial plan is fully based on your rate study. Okay. If you look, sorry, next slide, at your statement of operations, you see that you're balanced. There are some adjustments made because of those changes we talk about, but your total adjustments are balanced, your total revenues equal your total expenditures, and then your accumulated surplus at the end of 2026 is anticipated to be over $14 million. Now that is mainly because of the value of those tangible capital assets. So don't think for a second you're going to have $14 million coming in the bank. It's because of the accounting side of it. And that confuses people more than anything. They think, oh, we're going to have this massive surplus. That is not the case at all. All right. And then your statement of financial position, again, shows that you will actually be in a net debt position at the end of 2026. And that's really because of the costs you're putting into new capital assets, using up some of those reserves, taking out some of the debt. But again, your rates are allowing to ensure that you're fully funding your forecast, your budget next year and your forecast. Next slide. Matters for you to consider, obviously, the capital program, as noted, will change annually through your budget process, as well as the operating program that's been put in place, where the proposed water and wastewater rates are, and then getting the financial plan approved so that you can get your water license renewed. That is my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I know.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
I'll jump in first. So thank you,
I'm sorry.
Nancy, and I'll open up to the committee for any questions. Start with Member Brennan.
Chair, thank you for your presentation. Fascinating. On your chart there showing the 2025 comparison rates, you show some jurisdictions there, particularly one that came out to me was Wasaga Beach, with rates that are unbelievably low. Does that mean the taxpayer in those jurisdictions is subsidizing it? What's going on there? Like, how can they be so different?
Through the chair, I don't know all the specifics of what of Wasaga Beach's rates. No, all of the municipalities are on full cost recovery for their water, whether the wastewater. Some municipalities in the province still subsidize a little bit of wastewater, but I don't know whether that's Wasaga Beach or anyone else's case. For the municipalities that we do the DC or the water wastewater rate studies for, I can tell you that, many of them are not getting subsidized. Most of them on this list are not getting subsidized through the property taxes. There may be a number of different reasons their rates are lower. Could be the age of their system. That it could be that they don't have a lot of growth related works where they're doing other upgrades of components earlier than they would normally be doing because they don't have those growth pressures in there. It could be that they have different volume usage. I'm not sure how many customers are on their system. Typically, the more customers you have, the more the costs are shared out amongst those. For every customer you get, you don't necessarily increase your needs for expenditures at the same rate. So they could have a different mix. Their rate structure may be different. So there's in any specific one, and again, I don't do Wasaga Beach.
No,
so
no, fair enough.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I think our CAO has a comment.
Yeah, thank you. With respect to Wasaga Beach, my guess is it's economies of scale. So everybody in Wasaga Beach are on water and sewer pretty much, I think. And it's very urban. So I don't know their specifics, but they probably have one or two water plants and one or two wastewater plants where we're spread all over.
I see. Okay.
And we have, I don't know, 7, 9, 3 wastewater plants and how many water plants? Nine systems. So it's an economies of scale thing.
Right.
So more urban, the rates are always lower or generally lower.
That helps. Thanks. If I may, just supplementary. So I don't mind going on the record as saying is it subsidizing with other taxpayers to me, except maybe for affordable housing, and I mean affordable housing, would be something I would not find acceptable. In the event that that discussion was to occur, do you have any idea what the average person in Simcoe County or whatever who maintains their own well and septic system and water filtration systems, what their annual or monthly costs are?
I don't, and maybe I don't know if there does. I mean, I know that they're certainly costly to put in place.
Yes. Yeah.
Initially.
As is a as is a sewer plant.
Absolutely. But I don't know those annual costs, sorry.
Yeah. So no, it's just that in their cases, I'd just like to point out that these private wells, they do have like those filtration systems. I know my house was built in 2009. It's already beyond its fresh date. It's supposed to be replaced after 10 years. So you have enough to take care of without paying someone else's bills. You also have the challenges related to planning, people developing beside you. We've had lots of people in here this year worried about their wells. You have to worry about spills near your property and aggregate operations, et cetera. Anyway, they have enough headaches without taking on anybody else's. So it would be interesting to know what the costs are. Thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you. Member Burkett, and we'll go down the line there. And then Member Cox next, and then Member Minnings.
Thank you. Through the chair. So just to follow up with your question about Wasaga Beach, they also ran a $15 million line into Stainer. I don't know what revenues, that was years ago. So I'm sure they're making money off of that as well. So and I don't know what else they have, but there'd be all kinds of things like that that are contributing to it. And to our problem, I'm looking to Andrew, how are we ever going to pay the amount of money that's required? And I'm not in favor of taking it out of surplus or our reserve account, which is for the benefit of the whole township for 9 water systems. Like, how are we going to do this?
So before I respond through the chair, you do have water and wastewater reserves that are separate from your general reserves that are only for that.
No, I understand that, but we're talking $40 million. Like, there's no way a municipality like ours are able to.
And one of the things which I was trying to explain is a lot of that is the growth related works that would be paid for through growth, through your development charges. And of course, right now, throughout the province, in most municipalities, you're experiencing a slowdown in growth right now. A lot of things going on in the economy right now, south of the border. We're actually a little overdue for a recession. So things are kind of slowing right now when it comes to growth. And that's part of what staff will be monitoring. And where if the growth isn't coming, you don't need to build a lot of the additional expansions to the systems that we are assuming in here. We have slowed the growth over the next couple of years in the forecast, and then have it building up again to what you've seen in the past in the latter parts of the year. But that is something that through the annual budget process, if growth isn't coming, those growth related projects will be shifted out. Right. And so, because you won't be getting the growth related money through the development charges to pay for it. So on the flip side, if growth starts going, picking up and going faster, which has happened to other municipalities, you'll be getting the revenues and you may have to actually bring those projects sooner in the forecast. And that's why I say annually through the budget process, staff are looking at what the actual growth is, where the actual pressures are, and will move some of those growth related works forward or backward.
Thank you, Nancy. I know but again, you've got the Ford government saying that we don't have to collect DCs until the actual final. It's like there's problems with this, but let's go back to page 9. And on page 9, you've got our friend, and I'm sorry to pick on Member McIntyre, it is in his ward. I struggle with the Severn Estates. And if you look, you've got a figure in here, water treatment plant, $1.3 million, which equates to $51,000 per resident. And I don't know if you have an answer to this. And I know that we did ask our director to look into it. I don't know whether he's got, and I'm sorry to bring it forward now, Derek, but I know that there's a process that we would have to go through if we could even do this, but it would be cheaper to drill new wells for the 24 homes, put in their systems rather than spending the $1,325,000. Now, have you ever seen this done anywhere else in municipality?
Through the chair, typically, no. I have seen in many municipalities where small systems are taken on by the municipality. I haven't seen them go the other way. And quite often and Derek can help me with this, but quite often it's difficult to go back to a well-based system with what the ministry wants.
Okay, let me ask you this. So what was my question now? Oh, great.
Show me the money.
No, you know what? The charges. So based on the 24 homes and the amount that, how can we charge the 24 homes more money, like lots more to cover the cost? Because in reality, every person now on a system is paying for this, correct?
Yeah, so through the chair, a few things to keep in mind there. Yes, you can have area specific charges in place. What tends to happen there and things you need to consider, there's a few things. And I want to point out that, I mean, if I go back and Andrew might be able to help me with this a bit more, you did have differentiated rates, and council years ago decided that you're one municipality, and if you're getting water and or wastewater services, regardless of what system you're getting it from, everyone should pay the same. One of the things, if you go area specific, that you need to be mindful of is rates can drop for some for a short term and go up significantly for others. In having a municipal wide charge for anyone getting the services, you may have, for example, in one system, a lot of asset replacement needs coming due in this forecast period. And then once that's replaced, they're good for another 50 to 80, 90 years, where their revenues then going forward will help that you're getting will help to subsidize the next area that their infrastructure is getting old and coming due. So in having all customers pay the same regardless of which system they're on, it does help to kind of smooth over time that asset replacement need. That's something to consider, and with the equity. The other is depending on where your growth is happening. If if a lot of people aren't just looking at what is the initial cost of a house, it's the ongoing annual expenditures to maintain and be living in that home or business. And if the same house, for example, is being built in Coldwater and West Shore, and they're going to be the same cost to purchase a house. If one area with lower water rates, I may decide that's where I'm going to go because my annual costs are then different. No different than if you differentiated and did area specific property taxes. I'm going to look to go to where not just like if it's the same cost in either area, I'm going to look at now what else keeps my costs going on a forward basis. But again, that may only be short-term looking because eventually that system is going to need replacement and then I'm going to be spiked up and not realize it. So there's a few things to keep in mind there.
Supplementary, if I may, through the chair, and thank you for that. So in the report on, I don't know which page now, you got two conflicting numbers, and I don't know where you got this new iron removal, who came up with that, when we have problems in Coldwater, and yet you've got it in the budget, or you've recommended it at Severn Estates, again, an area where it can't grow anymore. We're limited to the 24 homes that we have there, and it's going to cost us $1.3 million. Sorry to pick on your ward member, McIntyre, but, and then on page 32, you've got the same new iron removal. You've got the one at 189, then you've got it at 175. I'd like to know why. There's a difference, and why are we doing it there and not in Coldwater where we have a huge problem?
I'm
Sorry.
going to defer that to
Okay.
Derek.
Yeah, so through the chair, there's softeners in these systems that have wells that are much lower cost. The one that we brought forward as part of the servicing master plan recommendations, which are in draft, the larger one is actually for Coldwater. And the Coldwater, we're calling it an improvement to water quality. We're not entirely sure there's a number of treatment train options that we have. We've slated it much later in the plan. There is a pretty significant growth component, which is reflected in the DCs as well. But there's a pretty significant user rate component as well. It also is an aesthetic objective. So there, as much as we do hear a lot of complaints about the Coldwater water quality, particularly with regards to hardness, these are aesthetic objectives, and we do meet all provincial mandatory objectives for the water quality. So it is a conversation that we're going to have in the future. And I think that another way to look at this too is we're still have an infrastructure deficit overall in terms of our renewal contribution to the asset, I would say, depreciation over time. So regardless of the projects we pick here, I do think a good chunk of the user rates that we proposed, are needed to refill and support our reserves as we deplete them. You know, we have a wastewater treatment plant in Coldwater that's built in the 70s. And as experience, you know, it's near end of life or at least a refurb, and we know we need growth. A lot of our plants are young. You know, we have West Shore is a 2006 installation, one of our biggest, and that's such a benefit to this municipality to have a young system at this time when we're looking at rates, because another 50 years from now, you're going to need significant reserves to replace it.
Thank you, Member Cox.
Well, most of my questions are asked. But I will say I would like to investigate Tiny Township because I think Tiny Township had small water systems of 15 people, 12 people, and they went in and they drilled. So don't ask me when it was, but it sits in my head that Tiny, because they're not in here.
Yeah, through the chair. I didn't include Tiny because they only have water.
Yeah.
And so quite often what it shows is they're way down at the bottom
Yeah.
because you're only looking at one
That's
versus
right.
two systems. And that's why I
And
didn't
actually,
include it.
Oromadani doesn't have
That's right.
the other. And the other one to look at was Saga Beach. That's the fastest growing municipality in Ontario right now. And they have tons of capacity. And I only know that because of that. Yeah, anyway, so there's nothing more. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Minnings.
Thank you through the chair. So just a general question, and it may be for Andrew. Where does our wastewater surplus factor into the projection? So I'm not asking how much is in there, but where does it factor into this document?
So currently right now we spend a certain amount. And I think Derek and I were talking about this the other day. It's about 3 million to operate the system, and we may generate about 4 million. 4 million, that extra million is either being used to pay for current year capital, or what's not being spent on capital would be going straight to the water and sewer surplus reserves.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a few questions for the slide. So in slide 5, you mentioned the Romera charge of 17 customers. So those 17, I just need help understanding. Are those 17 customers on our water system? Okay, I wasn't aware of that. That's all I needed to know. And then on slide 7, it's actually your slide 6 technically, but so okay, the West Shore, Coldwater is 140 on average, West Shore is 120 meters cubed. Would that be because West Shore has a higher proportion of seasonal residents than Coldwater?
Through the chair, it may be a part of it. A lot of times it may be based on the growth that's happened there too. Newer homes tend to have low flush toilets, higher efficiency appliances, which sometimes generate lower volumes that you see. A lot of it has been in flux over the last few years too. And we did look at the last 3 years. 2020 and 2021 data, we've completely ignored because with people working from home and not going to their businesses, those years were really out of whack. We're still not seeing everyone back at their office. There still is hybrid, but it's starting to stabilize. I can tell you that throughout the province, the average is between 120 and 180 cubic meters of usage for a residential home, depending on, the number of people in it and that sort of thing. That has come significantly down. If I look back to 20 years ago when I started doing this, the average was between 250 and 300 cubic meters throughout the province.
Wow.
So the fact that even older homes may be changing their appliances and getting it more higher efficiency, using less water, changing out toilets, using less water and wastewater and stuff. All of those things can factor in, as well as, all the new homes are basically built with that kind of higher efficiency stuff. So, and that's where even though some of those volumes are coming down, a lot of people, if you have really wet years, they're not out watering their grasses and their flowers because the environment's doing it for us. So climate change can impact some of that as well. And that's why we look at a 3-year average, typically 3 to 5, but we ignored the 5-year because it was out of whack. So there could be a multitude of reasons.
Thank you.
What someone else is using in another municipality may differ as well. The other thing to keep in mind is the maintenance of a water system. If you have a lot of dead end mains that don't loop around with water, you want constant flow. And so if there's a lot of dead end mains in some municipalities, they have to flush them a lot more. If there's major fire events, that could be using a lot of water that's kind of getting into the mix of that average as well. So there's other things that happen in the system throughout municipalities that may show differences. And that's where we look at 120 to 180 is the average that we see, but it's significantly lower. You guys are really on the low end of it. So your customers are very conscious of conservation, which is a good thing. However, most of your costs are still fixed.
Okay, thank you. No, that's a good explanation. And a lot of what you mentioned, it's not on my radar, so I hadn't considered those costs. So my last question, it's slide 12 in the package, but page 13, I guess, of your slides, and it's titled Proposed Capital Funding Programs to 2035. So I see that word, that scary word to me, debentures. And so right away, I'm breaking into a cold sweat because I'm in West Shore. My property has a debenture on it till 2035. And now this is new option. This is an option you're presenting, is to put new debenture debt onto West Shore. I just need help with understanding this concept as a solution to generate revenue.
So through the chair, look at the first word on that line, which is growth related. So because expansion of the systems are needed to allow more homes to be built and businesses to go in, with water and wastewater, as I was mentioning, a lot of times you have to have those systems in place before you can allow the building permits to be issued. So water and wastewater you're doing up front to allow growth. Because otherwise you're going to run out of capacity in the system you have, and then you won't be able to issue permits. So that's growth related debt that is assumed to be needed to help expand the systems. That debt will be paid for through, hopefully, the continuation of the collection of development charges or some type of capital charge. I mean, there was a federal budget yesterday too that came out that is also, offering up additional funding for municipalities for infrastructure improvements to help support growth. Staff will, of course, be tapping into every application they can to get some of those monies. And the province has matching, the provinces have to have matching money for some of that as well. Those types of, grant, if you can get some of that, will actually help pay for some of that growth related work and reduce what you would then otherwise need to issue in debentures. But that, the non-growth related debentures is what hits the rates. The growth related debentures don't hit the rates. They hit the development charges that you're collecting for.
I'm just going to jump in. The CEO has a comment, I think. Oh, Andrew, go ahead.
If I can, through the chair, the West Shore debenture itself was, as Nancy pointed out, wasn't growth related. It was more of a local area improvement in order to put you on the system to start with. So these debentures, even though they are called debentures, would not be funded individually by property owners like the West Shore debenture was. So they would be recovered, as Nancy mentioned, through development charges. And even the 2.4 million is likely to be debentured, and the interest and principal payment paid back via rates, but not put directly on the individual property owners.
Thank you. So then am I to understand that Member Burkett's question about Severn Estates is then a local improvement and it's not growth related? Because he absolutely said that they're limited to 24 homes.
I'll let Mr. Burke jump in there.
Yeah, through the chair. So that one's tricky because it's actually not growth. This is a renewal of a water system that, was again created in the 60s. We've inherited as a municipality. It serves a very low number of customers, and it is an extremely expensive system per customer to operate. So what we planned here is we're currently undertaking a fragmentation study. Tatham Engineering has that. We are anticipating a report in the very near future to discuss all of the options. Both the ministry, the health unit, and the team of engineers that we have are making recommendations on what is possible from both a fragmentation perspective, like putting everybody on to their own systems and let them have a rural drinking water system combined with their on-site existing private wastewater system as an option, or to replace the infrastructure that we need. But this is strictly renewal.
Back to Member Mennings, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, subsequent. Okay, I'm gonna have to watch that back and sort of understand it. So here's I'm like, I would never want anyone else to incur a debenture for a local improvement of a 30-year debenture like we've suffered through. And I've only been here for 9 of those years, but it's still, it is what it is. And I understand the reasons for that. But I also equally don't feel that the rest of the township should have to pay for that. And I think so as part of this study, and it's not a deep dive into this particular line, it's around what you just said, which is new information, and looking for that so that residents can afford their water and choose to live in Severn, which is what we all want. But it was that word debenture that and then now we're talking local improvements or not. I think as a council member, I need more information around all those nuances. So look forward to that part of it. Thanks.
Madam CEO is going to jump in.
Thank you. I just wanted to relate Councillor Minning's discussion about debentures to what Councillor Brennan had talked about earlier on. I understand the West Shore debenture piece outside of this rate stand. It sounded scary, but it gave people the opportunity to connect to water and wastewater. So you have to think about that as instead of replacing or maintaining your well and your sewer. So if you needed a new well 5 years from now, you probably would pay $30,000 for it. So that's what it's about, not about rate study. So I get that it's alarming, but it actually was a good thing. It's always better to be on local wastewater and water services than not. So it seems painful, but if you had to replace your water and your well and your septic, it would be more painful, and you wouldn't get to pay for it over 35 years.
Okay, Member Minnings and then Member Cox.
Yeah, thank you for that. So then just my last point or question, I don't know if it's a question, I'm just going to say that in your presentation, you talk about how we arrive at rates and all the various options, which was interesting too. And some of it I hadn't thought of or I didn't know were available. And in the charts that you gave us, were all based on the current model that we have, which is everybody pays the same. And I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to see, based on what you've mentioned as another option, a flat fee and then user. So again, I don't know if the variances are huge, because I'm thinking of, an individual who lives in a home who's paying the same rate as a home that has maybe 4 to 6 or more residents in it. But you also made the point, and this is where it's such a big conversation. You made the point that we don't want to punish people for having a family of 4 or 6 and then have such a big water bill that they couldn't. But is there a happy medium?
To be honest, through the chair, I mean, with all the things you need to deal with, you have a fairly fair system now. You're not area specific, where Severn Estates would be paying a very large charge, in the short term. And then, others are helping to subsidize it while, again, once their system is fixed and upgraded and in place, the revenues they're paying will help to subsidize other areas in the future when replacement needs happen. Keep in mind too, with the structure you do have, anything over that or that 68 cubic meters per quarter, they are paying more. So when you've got industry, for example, that is a larger water user, in your non-residential sector, or, if you do have 6 people in your home, you may actually be tipping over that 68 cubic meters per quarter. And then you are paying more because you're starting to pay that cost on the volume basis as well. So what we did was look at the average, and your average between most of them are around the 130 cubic meter, which is within that quarterly bill, but you do have customers that are paying more.
Thank you, Member Cox. Nope. Madam CEO.
Yeah, I just wanted to put a little context to that as well, some real life context. When I was treasurer in Springwater, we went lower on the fixed component to try and give people a break that don't use the water. That came back to bite us, because back to Nancy's talk about how people are getting so much better in conservation. So because the fixed cost was lower, the per unit cost was higher. So then people worked really, really hard to conserve, which you would think was a good thing, except back to almost all the costs are fixed. Then we didn't have enough to pay for our water systems. And the next go around, we had to exponentially raise the rate. So our system isn't perfect, but I think it's pretty good. And that's the risk you run when you mess with it. Unfortunately, it's a tricky thing to balance for sure. But we had some bad results in Springwater, and I wouldn't want to see that happen here.
Thank you, Member McIntyre, and then Member Jansen.
Yeah, through the chair, just a question to Derek. That Severn Estates 26 homes, is that not, could we not expand, is the water system there, could it provide for more homes if we expanded the 26 to 66, for instance? There's new growth around the area, Pinecone Trail and other, maybe up from Trent Trail towards the highway. There's all kind of opportunity there. I wondered if first of all, the well support it. Second of all, how prohibitive would it be if we offered that service to others?
Yeah, so the first thing I always think of when we're talking growth is how does it align with our planning documents, our official plan, that the areas aren't really slated as new settlement areas for growth. It's not designed for significant quantities of growth. And to add a relatively small, like low density residential connections through the existing built area of Canal Road and so on and so forth, it would be a minimal amount of new users for an extensive amount of new infrastructure. So I would say it's something that I doubt would be very useful. I think more useful than that would be possibly dragging water from an existing system like Waive, to serve this as a very long run of a distribution network. That is actually a consideration in the report that you'll see with fragmentation. But again, that's the longer it is, the more infrastructure costs you have. And again, you only got a handful of people funding it. So.
Thank you, Member Jansen.
Thank you, and thanks for the report. I think there's 2 private systems that we're assisting with. And that's at Riverwalk. I'm not sure what the other name is. How do they fit in with this? And do they also need to go through the same process that we're going through as a municipality?
Yeah, so through the chair, the 2 systems, it's West Shore Beach Club and Riverwalk. They act as a condominium. And so they do own and operate their own drinking water system and wastewater collection system. They have an ECA. Their financial requirements, I'm not entirely familiar with, but I understand they're quite a bit lower than the municipal drinking water license that we hold. But yes, in principle, the premise would be the same. They would need to have some kind of financial plan to manage their system. Right now, we operated 4 of them at a cost recovery, as you know, through the recent extension of agreement. And we've made sure to be a bit more accurate on those financial impacts to the municipality's rate system to transfer that cost to the condo core. And it's common element funded, right? So there's a board that collects fees, condo fees, to help fund that. But basically, they're just another user. They do pay individual rates. So, there's a meter at each home. So they pay their rate and then a bit in addition to their own private services that they have.
Thank you, Derek.
Okay, any other comment, Member Cox?
Yeah, through the chair to Derek, I guess, or Nancy can pipe in. I was always led to believe, and because when we talked about this subsidizing, I was always led to believe that that does not happen because it's user pay. Because like I had people over the years say, why am I paying for water and cold water? Well, I explained to them, you're not paying for water and cold water. You're on your own well in your own system. You're not. But there was some statement about somebody, some subsidize. Or did I mishear that? Because I was always under the impression that those water and sewer, wastewater, their users pay for that, not anybody else.
So through the chair, there has been discussion in the past about trying to help, for example, seniors or others for in lowering their bill. What I wanted to make sure was understood is because it's a user pay system, if you wanted to reduce for any, whether it's affordable housing, seniors, families with, 6+ people, whatever the case may be. If someone is paying less because it is a user pay basis, everyone else then pays more.
I got that part, but somewhere someone said maybe that system, Wasaga Beach, subsidizes, and that's what you were talking about?
On the wastewater side, some municipalities, there's a handful of municipalities still in the province that funds some of their wastewater costs through property taxes. Fewer and fewer. I know.
Oh.
Yeah, water cannot be. And
No,
hasn't
I didn't
been
think
able to
so.
For a year.
But
because
I
of-
didn't know that about wastewater.
And again, very few.
Is
And-
this
and-
just a leftover sort of a
Yeah.
grandfather thing that's?
Yeah, you see it out Essex Way where there's a lot of greenhouse growth that are all on water systems, but not on wastewater systems. Some of them are trying to get onto wastewater systems, and there's been some historic stuff
Okay,
in those
interesting.
areas.
Okay.
But again, there's fewer and fewer.
Okay.
They're trying to get off and make all of it user
Yeah.
based for both.
Okay, no, it was
directions.
just a question.
And all I'm saying is
Yeah.
with the comparators, because I don't do the rate studies
No.
for all of them, I don't know specifically if there's any for a few of them.
Yeah.
If there is anything, it won't be on the water side.
No.
It might be on the wastewater side, but I haven't, like I said, the only ones I've really seen are out in Western Ontario.
Yeah, and I guess maybe when I look at these rates, I think of the number of people and when they put their systems in, because they got their systems in before everything went like this. So then when they did that, they looked at large capacities for the next 10 years or something, and they may have overbuilt, which may not be such a bad thing if you're looking at it, because if you're waiting and saying we're only going to build out for 10 years, and you know as well as I do, we're pretty well guaranteed in 10 years from now it's going to be more. Maybe they built out at 15, 20 years and it cost a bit now, but in the end, it worked out for them in their rates. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yeah, it may also be when they were building their system, that there was grant funding.
Yes.
available.
Oh, that's true too. See, because when you look at Coldwater, they got 65 or 60, higher than that. I think they were almost, but they had a small debenture. Whereas West Shore, when we got our grant from WEP or West Shore, we were happy to get anything because at that time it was minimal and now it's nothing. But the government always gave good grants as incentives.
Yeah, and again, the age of the system through the chair, the age of the system matters too, because if you look back in the 60s, 70s,
Yeah.
there was a lot of grant funding, and
Yep.
that's when a lot of municipalities put their systems
Yeah,
in
that's right.
place.
Yeah.
Those municipalities are now, depending on the type of material used in the linear infrastructure and that, but they're like now coming due. for some major replacements, and they're now starting to see high rate increases.
Right.
Where newer systems, especially where there was grant funding in more recent years, have been able to keep the rates down.
Right.
That's not to say that as they age out,
Yeah.
the opposite won't happen, and that's part of where we want to make sure that we're smoothing rates over. We're not just looking at this 10-year, we're looking at all of those assets you have and when your lifespans are anticipated to end, to try and start, and Andrew's right, there's still a funding gap. You're not putting that 4.4 million away every year right now to reserves. But you're building your rates to a point where it's manageable, it's within your debt capacity. If something does happen, you've got reserves that you can respond to an emergency if it happens, or a break or something like that. So you're in good shape, and you've been, this council in past years have embraced the legislation and tried to work towards it, where others delayed and, weren't willing to have the rate increases early on that should have taken
That's right. And
place.
I remember, I don't know if it was you, but it was Watson's came here with us and said, we did increase. We increased our rates to cover the testing, and other ones didn't. And we got slammed for our costs. But in the end, it worked out. And there was a point where it looked like everything was going to go down, but now with the cost of everything, it's not doing that. But we did have there was a point where it didn't look too bad in the future, but now I see it is. And we did get a good grant for Coldwater to change those pipes. So that was the lead pipes, right?
Yeah, through the chair, Severn in general has been, very fortunate. We had the 2006 West Shore project that received a grant for its construction. It's relatively new, as well as the entire collection system, and the Coldwater system was 90% replaced. So we got nice PVC pipes under there that have a useful life of 85 years. That's a great position to be in. We are struggling a little bit on our collection system for sanitary and the pump stations and growth. That's really the story that we're up against right now.
Just a supplemental through to Derek. Derek, is it something we should be looking at then and I know we're in the middle of it, but is it something we should be looking at our wastewater for more than 10? Like, to make sure, because if things are moving as quickly, and they may not be moving now, but we know it's coming north. If we're only doing a 10-year, would it be not something that you'd look at, maybe something a little bigger, because that you've got to come back again? And I mean, within 8 years, we got to start a whole EA process and hope the heck that everything's done.
So through the chair, the last public information center we had on specifically Coldwater, you'll maybe remember that we looked at a 30-year growth pattern, and we built it in a way that it becomes somewhat modular. So what we'll do is we'll have, 3 events of capacity improvements that we're pre-slated for. We've done the math to make sure that the Coldwater River can discharge that level of loading. Did the work with the ministry to make sure that it's possible. So we have the ability to do 3 versions of plant expansion, so that you don't have a plant that's too big for the size of your community, and just kind of mirror the plant expansions with the actual growth that occurs. So that's what we are. That's what we built as a strategy as part of the EA.
And I just wanted people to know that we definitely are good providers or good savers for the future.
Well, and through the chair, just to add to what Derek said, your development charge for water and wastewater wasn't limited to 10 years. We did look out over that longer period as well to smooth the recovery of those rates over everyone that will benefit from the expansion, whether it's phased or not, that Derek's talking about. So we weren't limited to 10 years for that development charge calculation. What we brought into this forecast is where staff feel, based on the growth that we were embracing, some of those works would be needed. Again, those will shift forward or back depending on actual growth take up and by area, as it actually happens in the future. But your DC rates are based on a longer than 10-year period.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments? I'll have a comment after Mr. Plunkett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to maybe bring into a little piece on Wasaga Beach. Their costs, I mean, I don't know for certain, but their costs are probably very similar to ours, but they have 11,000 customers when we only have 2,000. So if we had 11,000 customers on our water system, we could drastically reduce the rates and still have already solved our infrastructure deficit. But unfortunately, we don't. And unless if growth was to happen really quickly, I mean, we could potentially get there, but.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, just the one that stuck out for me was Severn Estates, and we've talked about the $1 million. And just to what Derek said, I think years ago, Mr. Cameron put through a proposal to have treated water coming from one of the municipal water systems, and it didn't seem practical then, but we'd like to see it again. But on that note, thanks for coming today, Nancy, and a great report. And we have a motion from the clerk.
I thank you. We have two motions. So the first one is that the presentation from Nancy Neal, Watson Associates regarding the water and wastewater rate study and financial plan be received, and that the water and wastewater rate study be approved as presented.
We have a mover there, moved by member McIntyre, second by member Jansen. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
And then the second motion is that the Township of Severn's water financial plan prepared by Watson Associates Economists Limited dated October 21st, 2025 be approved, and that notice of availability of the financial plan be advertised, and further that the financial plan dated October 21st, 2025 be submitted to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing per OREG 453/07, section 316. Further, that a copy of this resolution approving the financial plan be submitted to the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, satisfying the requirements under the Safe Water Drinking Act, SDWA, section 3252.
Thank you. We have a mover by member Mennings. Oh, sorry, a question from member Mennings.
Thank you through the chair to the clerk. Now that I've heard the motion verbally, does this mean once this is released to the public and there's the 10-year plan in there for the increase of water and wastewater rates, does that mean that that increase automatically goes to the mayor's budget at the end of this month? Or how do those numbers play in? So we don't need to debate whether there's a water and wastewater increase. We're almost like pre-approving it. I want to know what I'm approving.
Go ahead.
If I can, through the chair, to member Minnings. Ideally, it would go forward as the rate we are proposing in the budget. That doesn't prevent council from, discussing it and doing an amendment if they so chose to do so. So you still have the ability to discuss the rates. It's just typically if we're going to prepare the budget, it would be those rates.
Okay, we have a mover again. Moved by member Brennan, second by member Jansen. All in favor? It's carried. And we'll have another 5-minute break. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. And we'll go to F 2.2. Speed limit review policy update is deferred from October 22nd. And I'll pass it over to Derek Burke, Director of Public Works.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. So I think it's more of a discussion now to look at the policy and what kind of rephrasing or if there is any changes required to get on the same page. I think the history has been that, you know, we've had a policy that mirrored TAC, which is the Transportation Association Guide of Canada, and how to post speed limits, but that relatively and almost frequently means that these rural roadways end up being 60 kilometers an hour throughout the entire stretch, and it's an exorbitant amount of signage and may feel too slow to some users. So that's kind of where we are.
We'll open up Member Cox.
Well, since I was the one, I still believe in this policy, but I also get that I'm going to have people say, yeah, but. And my worry was precedent setting. If we say, yeah, but to, then someone's going to come back and say, well, yeah, let them. What about me? So here's something I thought of. Could we do a grandfather clause that says specific roads will stay there, they are grandfathered, and the policy as of today going forward, this is what it is and that's the way it is? Through the chair to Derek.
Okay, to you, Derek.
Yeah, through the chair, I think, you know, of course, right? The policies are council initiated and staff supported phrases and you know methods to evaluating these speed limits. So I think we could try to bring that back, and we'll add a grandfathering clause in there, see what that looks like. At the end of the day, municipalities as road authorities have the authority to impose a posted speed limit on any roads in their jurisdiction, however they really feel, and so that's where, you know, I think there could be that.
Just supplemental, because I believe we need this policy, but I can understand that it could easily be that other members are going to say, yeah, but let's do this. So if we separated it, had two different motions, then that way if somebody comes in, we can say to them, those are the way they are because they were grandfathered. They've been like that for 30 years. These are the ones that the council felt. That does not mean that you can just come in and yeah, but. It's just a thought to try to compromise.
Member Minnings.
I thank you through the chair. Yeah, I'd like to propose another option too, because I think this is a good opportunity. You know, and Member Cox just presented a really good option too. And what I came to today's meeting thinking as an option was to create a range. So when we're talking about rural roads, we're talking about 30 to 50. That gives staff some flexibility. That gives those one-offs some options because no two roads are the same. We can see the static map and we see all the colors, but until you actually drive on those roads, they're not all the same for so many different reasons. And that would also give the urban, the urban roads, sorry, I'm fighting a headache now, more options if it was maybe from 60 to 80. So if the policy had a bit of a range built into the policy, then I think that gives everybody an option to know that there are extenuating circumstances, just like the grandfathering clause based on norms of driving. When I was looking up policies just in general to kind of get my head around what it, you know, policies, you know, can contain a range to allow conditions that one or more conditions can be true at the same time. So it's not a fixed it's not black and white. And it could include within the policy, a policy rule, which is a common part of policies if we choose to go that way, to consist of if this, then that sort of blocks of conversation. And it could be that if it was a pre-existing road and that would meet what Member Cox said about grandfathering, et cetera, but it could also offer different things and define some more conditions that really specify when this policy is enforced. The other part of looking at options. I agree. We need a policy around this. And I would like to keep it as, as easy for staff to enforce and operationalize, but also so that it does allow for some conversations and flexibilities to come back as roads change and as areas, whether they're pedestrian heavy, et cetera. The fact that we have a current 600 car, I think that's the number, 600 car threshold is difficult. And I understand that, whether it's a traffic calming policy or anything. However, because we are unique, and we not every street meets that threshold, doesn't prohibit the fact that some streets, if they do get more people driving on them, it could mean that they could have 100% increase, which is significant for that particular street, thinking Stockdale or Mill Street, or it doesn't really matter. If we're thinking of percentages of increase in traffic patterns, rather than trying to look at the number, we only have 13,000 residents across our whole huge township of 400 plus roads. So to get to 600 users on any given road is going to be hard. So just a couple suggestions. I think we have a policy, having a policy is good. We may not arrive at it today, and I don't see this as being an urgent thing to finalize, but I think it needs to be, we need to take into consideration that the township staff need a policy so they can work within that. But council also, who are the ones who are advocating for residents and all these different conditions, we can also live with it too. I'm not sure that the one today is that one.
Thank you, Member Burkett.
Thank you to the chair. And I agree, we need a policy, but whichever direction we're going to go, I would like to remove Stockdale Road. It remain from New Brayley to Brennan as 60, and Grass Lake line from Cambrian to Agnew, only because if you cross over Agnew, it becomes 50. So we're going to go from 80 to 50. And I can't understand the rationale, because that takes you out to the highway. I understand there's more homes on it. But again, if we can grandfather those two roads, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Member Cox.
Well, what Member Minton said, I'm not quite sure I understand completely what she was talking about. No offense. But is it a rush? Is that something, like Derek, through the chair to Derek, is that something that we do have to come back to explain this all to us, or can you bring it back? Because I think we all know that we need a policy, that we can't keep knee jerking all over the place.
So through the chair, I don't think there's any particular rush. I think, I've heard a couple of things. One is, a bit of a grandfathering clause, but at the end of the day, we have a policy where if somebody was to come to us tomorrow and say, I'd like Bockwell line reviewed, which, we have had recently, and we go out and catch some data and, apply that against the TAC guideline, it's going to tell us to post it at 60, and we're going to have to put out 10, 20 sets of signs. So right now we should, without a huge delay, address that issue, because that issue is right now we have a policy that staff would do something. And, we saw recently a motion that was contrary to that.
So I guess the issue is if we do this and we grandfather do whatever we do, when we get that policy, we all have to be aware that it's nice that we think it should be changed, but if the data comes back, we have to listen to the data and leave it the way it is. Because I think there's where I would say pickle is we sort of say, yeah, that's really nice, but we want this because 6 people said they want it. And I think that's where I'd like to have something a little more down the line, that the people could come, but if the data says no, we have to respect that and say, that's our policy. If the data says this, then this is what it is. And that was the only reason I thought maybe of grandfathering, because all those people don't know about this. And if we change this and they'll start coming in, and their policy will be in place and we'll have to say to them, but the data says you don't need it there. So if we did that with these, stayed with the data driven, and that's where we've all got to be understanding on it, is that's when we get in a muck, is because we're worried that someone isn't going to be happy when the data says it's not really that bad. Anyway, thank you.
Madam CEO.
Thank you. I think for timing, we're pretty close. There was two great ideas presented today, either grandfathering some of these ones that are contention or the ranges. I think chatting with Derek offline, the grandfathering probably works better than ranges because ranges gets back to judgment and not data. So does the grandfathering too, but it's a little more clear cut for future ones. So I think Derek has heard loud and clear which ones you want grandfathered. So it can probably come back as soon as next meeting. Like I think the bylaw is, or the policy is good as it is. We just need to say the following roads are grandfathered because of whatever reason we're saying. And I think he could probably turn that around pretty quick and then we would be done. Because I think where we started with this was one day people wanted it lower, one road, and the next day people wanted it higher. So I 100% agree with the deputy mayor that once you set your policy, please be prepared to stick to it. And it sounds like you're pretty close to being in the right place. But yes, we have to, I hope you stick with it going forward, that just because one or two people want their road higher or lower, because we've now seen it both ways. It used to always be lower, but now we've had some reversals. So I think if you're close, then Derek can probably turn it around pretty quickly.
Okay, Member Jansen and then Member Minnings.
Thanks. I guess I'm leaning more towards the grandfathering because like what I'm interested in is the history of how these roads came to be, or like these back roads came to be 60. I was contacted by a resident on Irish Line who said that 60 kilometers has been there for 30 years or so. So just maybe that doesn't make sense to change that when it's been there for such a long period of time. I'm not sure what the history is for any of these other roads. Is that something you'd be able to share with us when you come back to council? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Minnings.
Thank you through the chair. And I think my question was similar to what you just asked, Member Jansen, is we did hear today about a few roads named that for grandfathering, but there's a huge list in the report and I haven't had an opportunity to really consider that. So how are you going to come back to us, or do you want us to email you or et cetera about grandfathering? Because I would hate to have things grandfathered within a policy that were named today, but I really don't have the concept of which ones should or shouldn't, or should they all. Thank you.
Member Burke. Yeah, through the chair. So I think the policy was still really focused on the rural low volume roadways. So just, looking up through the center of the municipality, give or take. And there was 11 roads that were identified that, may benefit from just converting from a posted speed limit to statutory or not posted. So we can look at all 11 recommendations we've made and just kind of give a history. I know for a fact Irish Line has been a 60 for quite a long period of time. However, looking at the application, fairly low volume roadway, not a lot of development along that roadway, fits neatly within the policy, but maybe there's a grandfathering clause that makes sense. There are some others that have been changed fairly recently, gone down to 60, and, the history there might be same, don't have a lot of traffic here, very limited development on the roadway, very good candidate to just be a statutorily posted or not posted roadway.
And I just have one quick follow-up. So when this came to council on October 23rd, 2024, so about just over a year ago, and the recommendation at that time in the report was to lower the speed limit. And the reasons given was has a natural ability to lower the maintenance costs and lower the township's municipal liability in a claims defense position. Are we at risk then if we raise the speed limits?
So through the chair, there certainly is an effect on the minimum maintenance standards and the overall risk exposure to the corporation. because higher posted speed limits or unposted would, potentially be challenged. The recommendations of the 2024 report were to look at a process that mirrored the Township of Ramera, where all rural roadways, in this low volume rural roadway status that would typically be unposted under the Highway Traffic Act, instead of defaulting to 80, would default to 60. That does have a great benefit to the municipality in terms of, what class they would be, how fast our response times would be. And in a claims defense position, we would have a better leg to stand on for all of those components of road maintenance. So yes, but however, that report was rejected at the council level because, it was felt that traveling down Backwell Line or a number of these concession roads at 60 felt pretty slow.
Member Cox.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about Irish Line is the rationale, because I lived on it for 3 years. It's the summer. It's the summer traffic date on Friday nights and sometimes Saturday, but Sunday nights they fly down that road. So at least with the sign that says 60, I always think that there's a good chance that maybe 50% of the people will see it and go slow. But that was the rationale I remember at the time, was it was the massive summer traffic going back to Gloucester Pool.
Okay, I'll comment a bit on Irish Line too. Our farm abuts Irish Line, and just for Derek's information, Irish Line former concession 2 is a forest road. So it's not 66 feet for that road. And the people that were proponents back before my time on council still live there. Their kids live there and their grandkids live there. So they certainly want to leave it at 60. So just a history lesson there that there's not much room between the properties on both sides, and we've got a township road down the middle. Any other discussion with the committee? Allison, have you got a motion there?
So based on discussion, so the motion would be that Public Works Report W25-029 dated October 22nd, 2025 with respect to speed limit review policy update be received. And the staff report back regarding the grandfathering of certain roadways within the draft policy and any recommended related changes to the draft policy.
Any a move by Member Cox, second by Member Burkett. All in favor? Carried. And I guess the next is the RISE recommendation, Madam Clerk.
So motion reads that committee rise and return to formal council session to receive a report on the proceedings of the committee of the whole. So.
Councillor Jansen, 4.1.
Oh, no.
I'll move it.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we do actually still need to do that one item that was pulled by Member Jansen. Apologies. And that is still under committee of the whole. So that is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Member Taylor.
Over to Member Jansen.
Thank you. I think really due to timeliness, I had asked for this item to be pulled or to be added to the agenda prior to the government tabling legislation that would remove the or that moved to remove the automated speed enforcement cameras. My thoughts on this would be to turn down this recommendation that's put forward before us, as I don't really see I don't see an avenue for it to make any difference being sent to the province at this time. And I say that rather than elaborating and going over the whole report and picking things that were good out of it or not.
Madam CEO.
Yeah, I would just suggest that you receive it for information, because I don't know that you're all in agreement that you disagree with it, but it is moot because the government has already pulled them. So probably just to receive for information.
Okay, if we have a motion then, Madam Clerk.
Certainly. So the motion reads that the resolution from the city of Brampton regarding automated speed enforcement be received for information.
Moved by Member Jansen, second by Member McIntyre. All in favor? Carried. Now we'll rise.
Yes, so this part is still actually under committee. So until we get through the remainder of balance of F, and then we go back into, just for ease of So whoever's the chair of committee of the whole will chair the next two motions, and then when we go back to notice of motion, it will move back to the mayor. So, okay. So the motion then reads that committee rise and return back to the formal council session to receive a report on the proceedings of the committee of the whole.
We have a mover, member Jansen and member Mennings. All in favor? Carried.
Okay. And the next motion is that the recommendations of the committee of the whole for the meeting of November 5th, 2025 be adopted as resolutions of council.
We have a mover, member Brennan, second by member Jansen. All in favor? Carried.
Now do I go to notice of motion, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Over to
Any
you.
notice of motion?
None there.
None? County Council, Boards, Association, and Committee summaries. Anyone have anything to say? Any updates at all? Any member council? Okay. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, the third party review for the billing for Severn Sound Environmental Association is Monday the 17th.
I'll talk about, if nobody has anything, I'll talk about what happened yesterday at County Council. So there's been discussion about ward boundary changes. So Barrie, of course, has been in negotiations with Springwater in Oro-Medonte. It doesn't affect us, but it does in the larger picture because of the amount of county lands that they're going to expropriate. So we're going to lose tax revenue. So basically, it's a done deal. We weren't privy to all the discussions. I guess Springwater had been talking for 2 years with Barrie, and I think just the mayors were talking, and they had, from reading in between the lines, it was a done deal, whatever they agreed upon. So fast forward to yesterday, and we had a special meeting because we had until November 7th to County Council had to make a decision as to whether they were going to approve it or not approve it. So lengthy discussion yesterday, and I had no idea. I don't know where this came from, but we did put in the motion because Barrie upped the ante as far as buying some of the lands from the county from $7,000 an acre to $15,000 an acre, which equated to $5 million in the grand scheme of things. And 2 MZOs on 2 pieces of property beside Crakers, and the first I've even heard of it. So I asked where was and I was told it was in a report. No idea where the report was. And it wasn't just me. I think the majority of members sitting on the floor had no idea. So the motion went back to the province, and this is putting the cart before the horse because Oro-Medonte and Springwater still haven't voted. So I think Oro votes tonight, and did they? I don't even know how they voted because it wasn't in the paper. Not sure what they said, Madam CAO.
This is not official news because I haven't seen it in the paper either, but I have a family member who lives within Oro where they're getting annexed, and she tells me they voted yes last night to accept it.
Okay. So there's more in behind the scenes because the mayor of Barrie is married to a family member. I
Okay,
can't say that. All right.
No.
Anyways, I believe, okay. So anyway, so where we're at is we had concerns only because of the airport and the lands that were going to be zoned on the other side of Napoleon Stoves. So they were looking at rezoning those lands. Barrie wants them, but they were going to rezone them employment lands. Just the Springwater section. So there's so much in behind this that we were not aware of. We read it, they gave us all this information. If you can believe it, did it come Friday afternoon?
He does.
No, we had the meeting Monday. No, Tuesday. Was it last night? Yeah, this is Wednesday. Yeah, so we got all this information Monday in the afternoon, and some of it came at night, and there still isn't a proper map. Anyway, so what we agreed upon, and I'm glad it went that way, is that we had no issues with whichever land, Springwater and Oro, we're going to give up for residential because that's what the province wanted. What we had concerns with were the employment lands and how they may affect the airport. What we settled on is that Barrie couldn't dictate to us how we spent the $5 million they were going to give the county. And before any of this is signed, we wanted the 2 MZOs on the properties around Crakers, and I'm sorry, I don't know which ones they are, Because I didn't see it in the report. And again, there was no mapping. Yes, Dan.
Sorry, is the land that Barry is going after go all the way up to Craighurst?
Would you, goes up the 400, again, we had a map, but we didn't have the latest map, so we're not sure, Dan, this is what's so very, because what we were told, I don't know if I can say this, because some of it was in camera.
No, listen,
Better not say.
the map,
Oh, sorry.
and the map was on the Springwater website, and the map was on the Warren-Madani website, and the map that was on the Springwater website said up Highway 400 to Forbes Road, and on the other side, it went over to Highway 93. That was on Springwater's website. That's the map I saw.
It was very confusing, Dan, because the province placed a facilitator to negotiate. Again, I don't know. I can't remember. I better not say anymore because I don't remember what was in camera. Sorry.
No problem.
But anyway, so that's the way it went. I don't think that was a special council meeting. That's all we talked about. Those are my comments.
If I could I ask another question
Sure.
about county council if the Matchadesh waste
So
facility has been
it
discussed?
I have been told it hasn't come to council, but I have been told that it's going to remain, which is great news. Only because, and thank you for all your help, only because of the amount of people that actually weighed in and didn't want it moved. So it's actually a good news story.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Madam Clerk, do you have a motion?
Okay, thank you. Motion to go into close reads as follows, that committee resolve in a closed session that the meeting is hereby now closed to the public pursuant to the Municipal Act SO 2001, Chapter 25, Section 2392, for the purpose of considering personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal employees.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Minning, second by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? That's carried.
Sounds it.
Moved by Counselor Brennan, second by Deputy Mayor Cox. All in favor? It's carried.
Okay.
Okay.
The next motion is that the following individuals be appointed to the Coldwater BA Board of Directors: Karen McLeod, Teddy Lynn White Duck, and Colin Bidmead, and that the required bylaw be brought forward immediately.
Moved by Counselor Jansen, second by Counselor Minnings. All in favor? That's carried.
Okay.
Eh.
Bylaws. So motion reads that bylaws number 2025-68 to 2025-71 inclusive are hereby passed.
Moving in a second, moved by Counselor Jansen, second by Deputy Mayor Cox. All in favor? That's carried.
Okay, next motion is that bylaw number 2025-72 is hereby enacted by the Township of Severn, and this one's a little different because of an OLT decision.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Cox, second by Counselor Jansen. All in favor? That's carried.
Confirmation bylaw, that bylaw number 2025-74 is hereby passed.
Mover and a second, moved by Counselor Jansen, second by Counselor McIntyre. All in favor? That's carried. How's our coffee maker coming?
And adjournment.
One, I already got.
Oh, good.
And we're adjourned.
Working on it.
Adjournment.
Not anymore.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy.